it big. But me, your man, Louie T, a King Coop. Bless him.
Check. Cold drink. Check. New Jersey. Check. Louie T Network. Check. Okay, I'm ready. Let's go. Yeah, I'm so happy football back. I'm headed home in a rush now. Yeah, I'm so hyped. I can see my defense rush now. Yeah, I got 20 wings that I'm about to bust down to make me put my 2 arms up. I'm hollering touchdown. We put in hard work. I'm talking steel toes. Yeah. It's 4 for 3 on the 30 and I'm kicking field goals. Good. That mean I play it safe. Yeah. But yet I cause damage. Okay. And we get it how we live with home field advantage. So run that extra lap. Yeah. Throw that extra pass. Okay. You know what they say. Nice guys finish last. Hopefully we gon' see somebody dab soon. We gon' talk about it on Louie T in the lab room.
Yes. Back behind the mic. And this time we live. All the way live. We all the way live. We all the way live. Yeah, we in this live. In color. Don't diss the man cause I'll bum rush your mother. What's going on, family? It's your man Louie T here with another installment of the LTN podcast, episode 27 to be exact. We got a lot to get to today, so I won't delay. I'll get straight to the proceedings this evening. Trade deadline was crazy. Not as crazy as I thought it was going to be, but crazy nonetheless. Halfway point of the season. Let's give out some awards. So we'll do that a little bit later on, and then we'll have some fan participation and viewer participation as well. And so a lot to get to. I don't want to waste a lot of time. We got Thursday night football coming up. It's going to be a trash game, but still we got to respect it for what it's worth. It's a Bay Area battle. Those fans don't like each other. And once again, I urge you guys to behave yourself. No casualties in the stands or the parking lots today. Please, 49ers and Raiders fans, behave yourself. Nevertheless, let's kick this thing off the right way. And love you the right way with a gem dropping session. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man Louie T double E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. The NFL's best division at the halfway mark. Now, we talked about this before the season even got underway, and I told you very emphatically that the AFC North was going to be the best division in football in 2018. And the counter to that was a lot of you saying, bruh, what are you talking about? Go wash your face and get your mind right. It's the NFC South. And I denied. Well, after 8 weeks of football, as we are going into the 9th week, so pretty much the midway point of the season, you guys have been right so far. NFC South, best division in football. 17 wins, 11 losses, and if you look at the division top to bottom, it is probably the toughest division in all of football. Now, I'm not backing down from my statement. I still feel like the AFC North, when it's all said and done, will be the best division in football. Right now, they've got a cumulative record of 15, 14, and 2. So they're not that far behind the NFC South. And if you want to throw in the AFC West, I'll listen. They're 16 and 14, but the disparity between the best team in that division and the worst team in that division is too far of a gap for me to even consider them in the running. The Raiders stink, and the Broncos aren't that far behind. But if you look at the NFC South, New Orleans at 6-1, Carolina at 5-2, Atlanta at 3-4, Tampa with the same mark at 3-4. That's as competitive a division as you're going to find right now. And you have arguably the best team in the entire conference in the Saints in that division. We're going to find out just how good they are in week number 9 as they'll be taking on the conference's best team right now and overall the best record in all of football, the Los Angeles Rams, coming to the Superdome. We'll see how that game goes, and that'll go a long way in determining what will happen at the top of the NFC conference. And meanwhile, in the AFC North division, the Steelers are atop that division at 4-2-1. The Cincinnati Bengals are in second place at 5-3. Baltimore 4-4, and Cleveland at 2-5-1. But that 2-5-1 is misleading. We've all watched football this season, And we know that despite the firing of Hugh Jackson and offensive coordinator Todd Haley, the Browns have been in football games this year. Hell, they've played 4 overtime games already, tied 1, won 1, lost 2, and could have easily won all 4 of those overtime games. Easily have won all 4 of those overtime games. So you're looking at a team that's 2-5-1, but could easily right now be sitting at 6-1, 5-2. Seriously, 6-2, 5-3, somewhere in there. 4-4 at worst. If they weren't the Browns, they'd probably be 4-4 right now. So even though the record says that they're 2-5-1, they're a very dangerous team. One that you'll find I'm still not giving up on a little bit later on in the show, but nonetheless, it's amazing because I think the AFC North is going to be the best division, and right now the South in the NFC has been the best division, and those 2 divisions play each other this year, so it's actually going to play out on the field, which I think makes this dynamic that much more exciting to see it play out on the field. And so you look at the 2 best teams in those respective divisions, they haven't played each other yet. And if you're the Steelers, you haven't played the Saints nor the Panthers yet. So they've got some tough games coming up ahead of them. And if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, you've already played the Panthers, you've already played the Falcons, and you've already played the Buccaneers, but you still haven't seen the Saints yet. If you're the Ravens, you say, look, I've already went through Murderer's Row in that division. I've already played New Orleans. I've already played Carolina. And so I've got Atlanta left. I've got Tampa left, but I'll take my chances with both of those teams. And if you're Cleveland, you've already took on New Orleans. You haven't played Carolina yet. You haven't played the Atlanta Falcons yet, but you've played Tampa Bay already. So that's intriguing to see how the rest of that division does. And I'm fascinated by the fact that these 2 divisions play each other, and they happen to be the 2 best divisions in football. And it'll go a long way to determining what division is going to reign supreme in the league this season in terms of the best record. Right now, let's see if we can't calculate what these 2 divisions have done against one another. So the Steelers have beaten the Bucs, and they've beaten the Falcons. So they're 2-0 right now. Cincinnati has beaten Atlanta, and they have lost to Carolina, and they've beaten Tampa Bay. So they're 2-1. So that's 4-1 right now. AFC North over the NFC South. Baltimore has lost to New Orleans and Carolina, so they are currently 0-2. So that's 4-3 for those of you keeping score at home. And Cleveland lost to New Orleans, and they have not played anyone. And they played Tampa, and they lost that game as well. So they're 0-2. So right now the NFC South has a narrow margin of victory over the AFC North, 5-4. It's a 5-4 record right now. They're 5-4. Are the teams in the NFC South over the teams in the AFC North. So I want to see how that turns out, and I think that'll go a long way in determining how these 2 divisions shape up. But right now, the NFC South is the best division. You guys are right. So I've got a double O to hand out. Okay. I was wrong for the first half of the season, but I'm not giving up on the AFC North. I think they can still battle back and end up being the best division in football before it's all said and done. And they're right there. And again, if you want to throw in the AFC West, I'll listen. But again, it's too top heavy. The 2 bottom teams in that division stink. There's no way I'm considering the AFC West for anything other than some good teams that might qualify for the postseason when it's all said and done. Obviously, Chiefs are going to be there. Are the Chargers going to be there? Or is that 5-2 start to the season a mirage and a facade? We'll find out as the season progresses. They got a big one this week, too. Speaking of big games and facades and mirages, they got to go to Seattle this week. And to me, much like Seattle's game against Detroit last week, this is a potential play-in game in the playoffs. Now, for a much different reason than Seattle and Detroit was. They're in the same conference, and neither one of those teams, to me, are going to win their respective divisions. If they're going to get in, it's going to be because of wild card, and both of those teams aren't going to be wild card teams in Detroit and Seattle. So the winner of that game, for all intents and purposes, they were going to have a shot to make the postseason, and the loser of that game was eliminated. I eliminated the Detroit Lions from playoff contention in week number 8 with that loss at home to Seattle. I'm looking at those two teams, Seattle and the Chargers, and I'm looking at this as an elimination game as well. Now, they don't play in the same conference, and the head-to-head matchup won't matter in the grand scheme of things like the Detroit and Seattle matchup last week, but I'll say this. I still am confident because I already doubled down on the AFC North being the best division in football, and I told you before the season started, 3 teams were going to make it out of that division. I'm not backing down from that statement. I still think Baltimore is going to right the ship. I think Cincinnati's legit. I know their defense can be trash at times, and they can give up big plays, and their third down defense has been atrocious, but they create turnovers. Andy Dalton is really good when protected, and Joe Mixon is a stud. I like Cincinnati, and I think they're going to continue to win this season, and Pittsburgh is going to be there. We know that as long as they stay relatively healthy, they're going to be there at the end. So I still think 3 teams are going to make it out of that division. Hence, somebody's got to go out of the wild card. That team right now is the Chargers. They are right now 5-2 and firmly implanted in the playoffs if the season were to end today. But the season does not end today. They've still got to play football. They've still got another game with the Chiefs, who they cannot seem to beat. They could easily lose to Denver at some point in this season if the Broncos don't quit. And they've got another game with the Raiders. So we'll see what happens with them. This Chargers and Seahawks game is huge because not only do the Chargers have a game here against a team on the road that they could lose to, they've also got Baltimore later on in the season. So their schedule is not easy, and I just don't see the Chargers being good when the season's done. I don't trust the Chargers. I've said that a million times, and they could have easily have lost to Tennessee before the bye week, but they won the game, and that's what good teams find a way to do, is win. And normally in this spot, the Chargers right now would be somewhere in the 3-4 range after starting the season off 1-4. And they would have run off 2 straight, and they're trying to dig themselves out of a hole. For the first time in a long time, they're actually on the right side of these close games. They're 5-2. They feel good about where they are. Let's see how good they actually are, though, on the road at Seattle. This will tell me a lot about the Chargers and if they're serious about making the postseason and maybe even making a run at the AFC West crown when it's all said and done. But that's my gym dropping session for today. Let's move on. We've got so much to get to. Let's go to the next topic of discussion in the next segment, one that I always have a lot of fun doing. Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise.
So last week on the pod during the gym dropping session, we talked about the NFL trade deadline and how it's evolving, how Major League Baseball and NBA trade deadlines seem to have a lot more luster and a lot more impact on the immediate and sometimes the long-term future. And the NFL trade deadline just seems to kind of mosey along, and it doesn't really impact the current season. Well, last year we saw the Jimmy G trade. Last year we saw the Kelvin Benjamin trade. Last year we saw the Jay Ajayi trade, and arguably that trade had a huge impact on the Eagles' eventual Super Bowl season. So this year's trade deadline, really intriguing stuff. Teams really making power moves to try to better themselves for the here and now, and we don't see that in the NFL. We don't get teams admitting that their season is a lost cause and them starting to prepare for the future. Generally, NFL teams don't wave the white flag 9 weeks in, but we've seen a couple of teams essentially do as much, the Giants being one of them, and you could argue the Denver Broncos being another, even though they really like Courtland Sutton, and we've talked about that on the podcast and on lockdown coverage as well. Nonetheless, let's take a look at some trades that have happened this year. These weren't trade deadline deals per se, but they've been trades that have happened this year that could impact the 2018 season. Obviously, the elephant in the room, Cowboys trade for Amari Cooper. They were the Cowboys being trolled. Jerry Jones and that entire organization being trolled to no end after the trade deadline met its conclusion, and teams around the league looked at and fans more specifically looked around the league and saw what the value was for a true number one receiver in Demaryius Thomas, a 4th and a 7th rounder, and you gave up a number one for a guy like Amari Cooper. Are you kidding me? And everyone, including myself, said as much when that deal was consummated, that they made a mistake. They overpaid for an item that they could have got for a lot less, and that's why we said the Raiders did themselves a good service by flipping Amari Cooper for a first-round pick. But nonetheless, the Cowboys make a move that could potentially give them a chance to get back into the NFC East race. And if nothing else, they will find out just how good Dak Prescott is, because now you can't claim they don't have any good receivers, even though I thought that Cole Beasley was a guy that they could have been riding the coattails of this year, but that's another story for another day. Eli Apple to the Saints. He stinks, and they're going to find that out in New Orleans. You're hoping a change of scenery is something that will jumpstart his career in New Orleans, but I just think Eli Apple isn't very good. Jags trade for Carlos Hyde. We don't know what that's going to actually mean for the Jaguars. I thought that if that trade was going to actually amount to something, it needed to happen while Leonard Fournette was on the shelf. They reportedly think he'll be back after the bye week. They're on their bye week now. He'll be back in week 10, we think. We can't be certain for that because we've heard a lot of mixed reports throughout the season that Fournette was going to play and then he wasn't going to play. And so, for all intents and purposes, he should be back in week 10. And if he's back, he's the guy. He's going to get the rock. But we'll see if Carlos Hyde has any impact on that Jaguars roster, because they need to run the football. And whether it's Hyde or it's Fournette, who gives a shit? They got to run it to take some of the pressure off of Blake Bortles and that Jaguars defense. Pats trade for Josh Gordon. Flash! Gordon! That looks like a great trade. They were still out there hungry for another receiver. I don't know if that had anything to do with the on-the-field production of Josh Gordon or potentially some of the off-the-field shenanigans that he brings to the table. Apparently, he was late for a meeting, and there was supposed to be some disciplinary action taken in the game on Sunday or Monday night, but that didn't happen, so maybe that was a false report. I don't know. I'm not here to speculate. I just know this much. His ability to go out and make plays is going to enhance that Patriots offense and make them that more dangerous. That's a big time trade for the New England Patriots. And then Snacks Harrison to the Detroit Lions. Lions have one of the worst rush defenses in all of football. I don't know if one man can change all of that, but we'll see what kind of an impact he has on that Lions roster. Didn't have that huge of an impact this past week versus the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks ran for damn near 180 yards in that football game. And so, again, he's going to need time. They're going to have to figure out some things, but the impact was not that great in his debut as a Detroit Lion. So now let's get to the deadline deals, shall we?
Surprise, surprise.
Golden Tate to the Philadelphia Eagles. Didn't really see that one coming. I knew Golden Tate could potentially be on the move. I did not know exactly where. Hell, he didn't even know that he was on the block. It was a funny little exchange. There was a tweet out by one of the NFL insiders about the New England Patriots inquiring about Golden Tate, and Tate responds to the tweet by tweeting out, "What you talking about, Willis?" So he had no idea that he was on the block, but he was moved for a 3rd round pick in the 2019 NFL draft, so the Lions will receive that compensation from the Eagles, and the Eagles are all in. You know, you win the Super Bowl, you get off to a rough start the following season, but you feel like you're right there, that division in the NFC East, wide open, and so you make this move to bolster what is probably one of the weaker parts of that Eagles team at the receiver position, and all of a sudden now, look at the Eagles potentially being a big-time competitor in the NFC Conference, and they've still got big games down the road. They've got the Redskins twice. They've got a big-time matchup down the road with the Rams, so there's still some big games on the schedule, and the Cowboys 2 times as well. So there's some big games left on the schedule for the Eagles. We'll see how quick Golden Tate can get up to speed, but that's a big move in the NFC arms race. That's a huge move for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Surprise, surprise.
Dante Fowler Jr. to the Rams. Wow. I mean, I was begging for my Redskins to go out and acquire Dante Fowler Jr., as most Redskins fans Word. This guy is a true difference maker as an edge rusher in this league. He's a head case. I've said this a million times. This guy's crazy. He's one taco short of a combination plate, right? There's a lot of air in his bag of chips. However, this guy, when he's right, is a beast, okay? He's explosive, he's dynamic, he's disruptive, and he can be the difference between the Rams getting to the Super Bowl and bowing out in the divisional round of the playoffs. He's that special of a talent, and it's funny because the rest of the league reacted, and I saw a tweet from the Chargers running back Melvin Gordon III, and he said, damn, how much do they need? As in first round talent on the defensive line. Just look at and think about former first round picks that the Rams have on their defensive line. You've got Ndamukong Suh, former first round pick. You've got Aaron Donald, never ever trust a man with 2 first names, former first round pick. You've got Michael Brockers, former first round pick. Now Dante Fowler Jr., former first round pick. So across the board, they've got former first round picks to the Los Angeles Rams. It is insane to think about how much talent is on that one side of the football. And we know that their offense is one of the most explosive in the league. I've said as much the past couple of weeks, maybe going back to the Seattle game, that they've struggled defensively, and maybe Aqib Talib's injury has a lot to do with it. And when he comes back, that'll clean up some of the deficiencies in that secondary. But they've struggled. When they're not getting pressure on the quarterback, you can make plays against that Rams defense. Maybe this changes the game a little bit and moves the needle back in the direction of this Rams defense. It's a big move for them. And they only gave up a 3rd rounder in 2019 and a 5th rounder in 2020 for a guy that I think has the potential to be a difference maker up front. In a league where pass rushers come at a premium, the Rams just added the best one that you probably could have gotten in this trade deadline frenzy. And so you've got to tip your cap to the Rams, who made a statement in the offseason that they were going all in for the Super Bowl. And this is another sign that they're not playing around. They're trying to win, and they're trying to win now.
Surprise, surprise.
Demaryius Thomas to the Texans, probably the biggest blockbuster for me, because I look at the Texans as a scary, scary team. You know how I feel about Nuke and what he brings to the table. That injury to Will Fuller V, that sucks, man. That really stinks. I was really hoping that wasn't as serious as it looked, but he's done for the season with the torn ACL, and they needed to infuse a big-time injection of wide receiver help, because Kiki QT is a guy that can be a difference maker as an explosive, dynamic playmaker, but he's injured, and so you don't know what you can count on from him as a rookie. Enter in Demaryius Thomas, DT88, to me, is still a number 1 wide receiver in this league. He hasn't been as productive as he has been in the past under a guy like Peyton Manning, where he was catching all kinds of footballs, making all kinds of plays, but make no mistake about it, him across from Nuke is almost like cheating. And to give Deshaun Watson another major weapon in the pass game, one that he can rely on. Now, Demaryius has no problems dropping the football. It's well documented, but the dude is a stud. That's a big move, and that changes things in that division. The Texans have to be the clear-cut favorites in the AFC South now, if they weren't already before the move was made. I still thought that Jacksonville and even Tennessee to a degree, and don't sleep on Indy, they've won 2 straight, albeit against the Raiders and the Bills. I thought that those other teams had a shot. Now, with the way the Texans defensively can get after teams, and this offense, Deshaun Watson is coming off of a game where he threw 4 touchdown passes, and you add Demaryius Thomas. Think about that for a second. This makes the Texans a legit contender, not just in their division, but in the AFC conference as a whole. They play defense, folks. Now they have an offense to match that defense. This might have been the biggest steal of the trade deadline deals. Demaryius Thomas to the Texans, and all for a 4th and a 7th round pick. Who knew? Now, he costs a lot of money, but the Texans can afford it. Why? Because they've got a quarterback on a rookie deal. They're not hurting for cash over there, because you're not paying your quarterback for the next 4 years, most likely. So they've got money to burn, and that's not a bad way to burn it. A 4th and a 7th rounder? Shit, I would have took that if I were the Redskins, but Redskins didn't have that kind of bread to shell out to the receiver position, I guess. We'll see. Big move, though, for the Houston Texans.
Surprise, surprise.
Speaking of the Redskins, Clinton-Dix to the Redskins, and all they gave up was a 4th round 2019 NFL pick in the draft. Not a bad move for the Redskins, adding a playmaking, ball-hawking safety alongside a guy that has been arguably the best safety in all of football this year in DJ Swearinger. Now you add Clinton-Dix to the mix, and you got to feel good about the prospects of the Redskins defense that right now is playing their best ball in over a decade. And we haven't seen the likes of this kind of Redskins defense since the Greg Williams days in Washington. And so this deal to acquire Clinton-Dix bolsters a secondary that was somewhat questionable and still is. But you add another playmaker into that secondary, and you just give Greg Minuski another tool and weapon to have this defense be even more diabolical than it's already been this season. So we'll see if the Redskins can take full advantage of a talented safety, and we'll find out if this was a one-year rental or if this is a guy that they deem as a long-term solution at the safety position in Clinton-Dix. Either way, to just give up a 4th round pick to find that out, with the Redskins having about 19 picks in the 2019 NFL draft because of all the free agents they lost in last year's free agency, that's a small price to pay for potentially a huge addition to your team mid-season. And finally,
Surprise, surprise.
Ty Montgomery can kiss my ass. All right? Ty Montgomery, tell me how my ass tastes. Or rather, Green Bay, ask Ty Montgomery how your ass tastes. Man, he pissed me off on Sunday. I gave out the Green Bay Packers as my upset special on my money picks, and this bastard pissed away the game. I was going to win not only that game, not only get my upset special right for the first time in 3 weeks, but I was going to win the football pool. Had I won that game, I would have had one loss, and I would have went into Monday night, and I would have won the football pool on points. But this stinking ass bastard and Ty Montgomery decided to take matters into his own hands, fumble away the game, and take the football out of the bad man's hands. How dare you? And you know what your consolation prize for being an ass is? Pack up your shit and get out. Go to Baltimore. And look, that could actually be a good thing for him, but they've got a crowded backfield in Baltimore, and I don't know if they have visions of turning this guy back into a receiver or if they like him as a receiving threat out of the backfield. Either way, they've got a lot of stuff in Baltimore. None of their stuff looks like Ty Montgomery, so he may have a home as a pass-catching third down back in Baltimore because they don't really have one of those in Baltimore right now, so he may get work in Baltimore, but I'm glad they sent him somewhere where there's a crowded backfield and hopefully he gets lost in the sauce because he pissed me off. But it may be a good deal for Baltimore when it's all said and done because all they surrendered was a 7th round pick in the 2020 draft. So really, they gave up a opened bag of chips that happened to fall on the ground, and some of the chips got dirty. And they just swept them back into the bag and handed them over to the Green Bay Packers. That's what the Ravens essentially did. Or the Packers essentially did. It was they opened a bag of chips, ate a couple of them, dropped it on the floor, chips fell out of the bag, swept them back in. There's a couple of dirt particles on those chips. Packers still will eat them. But if you're the Ravens, this may turn out to be a really, really good deal for you. Because Ty Montgomery, although he pissed me off, he can do some things for you out of the backfield. He's very, very diverse, can catch it, can run it, can do some things for you, and add some special teams value. Although after seeing this clown fumble, I don't know if I'd be interested in putting him back on kickoffs. But that was actually a pleasant surprise. Get your ass out of Green Bay. So let's talk about some deals that didn't happen. We thought about the corner, and I talked about this on the pod last week, how the cornerback market out there was looking real rich, and maybe the Giants would move Janoris Jenkins. Nah, they were good. They passed on that. Now, I don't know if the phone rang and teams inquired about him, and I think teams did, but maybe the Giants weren't all that gung-ho as we thought to move Janoris Jenkins, or maybe the deals that teams were offering wasn't enough for the Giants to move the Jackrabbit and allow him to move on to another team. The Raiders, we thought they would be major players and that they were having a fire sale, and that Garyon Conley and Carl Joseph, a couple of former first-round picks, would be on the move. And hell, we thought maybe even Derek Carr might be on the move. Well, Derek Carr had arguably his best game of the season in a loss versus the Indianapolis Colts, but he played his ass off in that game and gave him a chance. I don't think Derek Carr is going anywhere anytime sooner, or at least not until the offseason if they decide to move him. But I thought Garyon Conley and or Carl Joseph would be moved. Neither one of those guys have gone anywhere. That was a little head scratching because they don't like either one of those guys in Oakland, and so why not get something for these assets here? But you know what? Maybe they'll have chances. They're both young football players. Maybe they'll have a chance to redeem themselves in Oakland. You go to Denver with the Broncos, and I really thought Elway was giving up on the season, and I still do. I think he realizes Case Keenum stinks, and they're not going to win anything of note this season. And so I thought they were going to try to move some more of these pieces. I thought Emmanuel Sanders was a guy that you could have at the trade deadline. I knew Demaryius Thomas, and honestly, they did the right thing, because if you ask me between the two, Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, E-Man Sam would be the guy I would hold on to, because you had a clone in Denver in Demaryius Thomas and Courtland Sutton. So you could move on from one of those guys. Obviously, Courtland Sutton is the younger and cheaper of the two, so you keep him and you move the more expensive piece in DT88. But I thought Sanders could be had. They were smart to hold on to him, because whomever they get at quarterback, whether it be a rookie next year or a veteran, they need targets. And to me, E-Man Sand's still one of the better ones in the league. Chris Harris Jr., I thought they were going to try to move him and get some real draft capital for him. But they didn't, and he's a hell of a football player, still got a lot of juice left in that tank. So I think that that was a good move on their part. And I thought Shane Ray or Shaq Barrett, one of the two, would be expendable at the trade deadline. They didn't move either one of them. That was head scratching. I thought they would move one of those guys and get something in exchange for one of them, but apparently that wasn't the case. And in Miami, I was convinced, and I said this on the pod the last 2 weeks, not 1 but 2 weeks, that they were going to move Devontae Parker. Devontae Pay! I was wrong. They didn't move Devontae anywhere, and after the game he had on Thursday night versus the Houston Texans, I thought that his stock was as high as it was ever going to get, and if they were going to move him, that was the time to do it. But they've got so many injuries to the receiver position that maybe they thought better of moving Devontae Parker. Look, the Dolphins are 4-4. They're not dead yet, and they're not even out of the AFC East divisional race. But come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. We know they ain't winning a damn thing in the AFC East, but hell, why can't they get their hands on a playoff spot? Why can't they get a wild card? Because they're not better than any of the teams in the AFC North, not named Cleveland, and they're not better than the Chargers. That's why they can't get their hands on the playoff spot. But hell, that shouldn't stop them from trying, right? And if they're going to give it a run, they're going to need a guy like Devontae Parker, so they didn't move him either. But you know what? A lot of things happened during this trade deadline, and all of them ended up being, to me, a
surprise.
Answer.
Pod trivia. So let's jump into some LTN pod trivia for this week. And last week's question that I gave you reads as follows. Jerry Rice, Terrell Owens, and Randy Moss are all Hall of Fame wide receivers, but also well-traveled wide receivers. Between the three of them, how many teams have they played for in their illustrious careers? The answer, 13. Rice played for 3 teams in his career. Owens played for 5 teams in his career. Likewise for Randy Moss. He played twice for the Vikings in his Hall of Fame career. So that leads us into this week's LTN Pod Trivia, and it reads as follows. This former LSU first-round pick burst onto the NFL scene with 80 catches for 1,193 yards and 7 touchdowns in his rookie campaign, but could never match that productivity again and soon thereafter flamed out of the league. Who is he? I repeat, This former LSU first-round pick wide receiver burst onto the NFL scene with 80 catches for 1,193 yards and 7 touchdowns in his rookie campaign, but could never match that productivity again and soon thereafter flamed out of the league. Who is he? We'll take a quick break and finish up the podcast. You are tuned in to the 27th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I'll see you on the other side. What's going on? It's your man Louie T here. Quick question. Do you use Amazon for some of your online purchases? Cool, so do I. Another question for you. Can I get a little bit of help from you while you shop on Amazon? Cool beans. Here's how you can help. It's essentially a two-step process. Step 1. Instead of typing in Amazon.com, type in bit.ly/Louie T Network. That URL will automatically redirect you to Amazon. Step 2, either log into your Amazon account or just start shopping. It's that easy. By using my URL, any purchases that you make over the following 48 hours on Amazon will be credited to my Amazon affiliate account, which in turn allows me to make a small commission. So you still get the item or items you were looking to acquire, all the while helping power the Louie T Network movement in the process. So it's a win-win for all parties involved. So remember, making an Amazon purchase, no matter how big or small, type in bit.ly/Louie T Network. That's bit.ly/Louie T Network instead of Amazon.com, and make your purchases that way. You can't begin to imagine just how doing this simple act consistently can help. And one more thing. Thanks for everything. Welcome back to the Louie T Network podcast, episode number 27. Thank you so much for joining me. You could be so many different places but here right now, but you're here right now. And I thank you for that. And for those of you not here right now, and don't know that you can get this podcast on a multitude of platforms, there is iTunes, there is Stitcher, there is Google Music Play, and of course the website louietnetwork.net. All of those places you can find this podcast. Help yourself. There are 26 other episodes besides this one. Knock yourself out. Also, there's lockdown coverage. So there is a lot of content. If you haven't been keeping track of the Louie T Network podcast, make yourself comfortable. And as you heard on the ad just now, the little break that I gave you, if you're on Amazon and you're making purchases, hook a brother up. bit.ly/Louie T Network. That's all you got to do. It'll take you straight to Amazon, make your purchases, and you'll be helping your man Louie T out in the process. Appreciate you. So, I tweeted out earlier that, and this is on my Twitter account for this podcast, at LTN Pod on Twitter. So, for those of you who aren't following me, what are you waiting on? Get busy. At LTN Pod on Twitter is where you can follow me, and I'll give you all the updates on this podcast, when they're dropping, what's new, give you some tidbits and some previews, things of that nature. And so I tweeted out earlier that we're going to have viewer participation, and we're going to have a call-in segment tonight. And I've got a segment carved out for you guys, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm going to open up the phone lines, and we're going to allow you guys to participate. So this one is called Fill in the Blanks. So I'm going to give you a question. There's going to be a blank. You're going to fill in the blank, and you're going to tell me why. I want a brief explanation. I don't want you going off on some long diatribe. I just need a quick, concise explanation as to why your answer was what it was. Okay? So, with that in mind, let's open up the phone lines and let's play Fill in the Blank. All right, fam. So I've given you instructions on how to be a part of the show, and I've got a segment, like I said, carved out for you, fill in the blanks. So the number is at the top of the screen. If you want to participate, call in and we'll get the party started. And I've got questions for you guys lined up, and I'm going to give each person that calls in 3 questions. Like I said, I don't need a long diatribe as to what you want to say after you give me your answer. I just need a short, concise answer as to why your response was what it was. So with that being said, call in and let's get this show on the road. Let's play fill in the blank. So we've talked about the draft, the trade deadline in the NFL and how it's evolving. And we've also got some midseason awards to hand out. We're 8 weeks through the season. We're heading into week 9, which splits the season right in half. So I want to know what you guys think some of these awards should be and who they should go to. I've got a number of questions to ask, so looking forward to you guys chiming in, calling in, and us being able to get this going. So let's see, waiting for you guys to hit me up so we can get this started. If not, I'll just read the fill in the blanks and I'll fill in the blanks myself. So I'll give another 2 minutes or so because, again, I don't want to bump heads with Thursday night football. I want to be able to allow you guys to do whatever you need to do to prepare for Raiders and 49ers. I know, it's not the best game in the world, but nonetheless, it is a football game that I'm going to sit down and watch and see how it unfolds. And I didn't know C.J. Beathard was going to be out of this game. All week they had been talking about his wrist and how, he couldn't grip the ball, but I thought they'd find a way to get him to play. In these Thursday night games, if this were a Sunday game, he probably would be able to play. But there we go again with these damn Thursday night games. So doesn't look like C.J. Beathard is going to be able to play tonight. And I definitely don't trust Mullins. Watched him in the preseason. He was awful. So I think this has got to be a Raiders win tonight. So we'll see what happens. If the Raiders can't stop the run, and they haven't been able to stop the run, Marlon Mack went for over $120 on them last week. If they have issues stopping the run again, and the 49ers are still, despite the lack of consistency from the quarterback position, they're still one of the better rush teams in the league. If the Raiders can't stop the run, they're going to have a tough time stopping this 49ers offense, despite them having a third-string quarterback in the game. So I'm intrigued to see what happens. But nonetheless, let's get this going. So no one has called in. So I'm just going to jump in, and I'm going to start reading off. And I think I might have stumped some of y'all with that trivia question. I've had some really good trivia questions. Some of them have been easy. That one was a little bit tougher. I think I see 1 or 2 right answers in there somewhere. I've been looking through the comment section. But for the most part, I think I stumped a lot of you guys. You may not be aware of what's going on. But in any event, let's jump into fill in the blank. So I want to start with some of the trade deadline fill in the blanks that I have concocted. And the first one is most impactful deadline deal was fill in the blank. For me, I look at the deals that were done, and the one that absolutely blows my mind, I think it's a great fit, and I think it takes this team from a middling team, middle of the pack, yeah, you might win your division, but nobody's afraid of you type of team, to whoa, wait a minute now. You've really got to take a hard, long look at the Texans and what they were able to accomplish with the move to acquire Demaryius Thomas. Arguably, Demaryius Thomas is still a number 1 wide receiver in this league. And when you look at what they're adding him to with a guy like Lamar Miller, who I love, I told you I think Lamar Miller's game is a really steady offensive game. I think he does a lot of unsung things that people don't give him credit for. He runs tough between the tackles, still can hit the home run. We saw him break off a big run, didn't score on it, but I liken him to Clinton Portis. Lamar Miller was a home run threat in Miami before he got to Houston. He gets to Houston. They beat the hell out of him. They run him in between the tackles. And so now it slowed him down a bit. He's not the same 4-4 guy that was in Miami dusting off cats and breaking off 70-yard runs for touchdowns. But he can still hurt you. And like I said, he reminds me a lot of Clinton Portis. And so I see a lot of that in him. He's awesome. I love Lamar Miller. When he's healthy, he's effective. Nuke is one of the best receivers in the league. You know how I feel. I think he's the best receiver in all of football. But to add another number one to a guy that is already a clear number one just means you got 2 ones, and there are a lot of teams that don't even have a 1-1. I mean, my team doesn't even have a number one. We've got a bunch of 2s and a couple of 3s. They've got 2 1s, 2 legit number 1s. And then you get a guy like Kiki QT that I think can come in and help in the slot and add that element of speed. I really love what the Texans are doing. So I think the Texans deal for Demaryius Thomas was by far and away the most impactful deadline deal. Most surprising player moved during the trade deadline was fill in the blank. So when I looked at all the deals that were done right before the deadline, the one that I don't think I necessarily saw coming was the Clinton-Dix deal. Now, from the Redskins' perspective, I didn't see it coming because I didn't know the Redskins had an issue at safety. Now, Monte Nicholson's health has been something that has plagued the Redskins the last couple of years, or last year. He hasn't been on the team but 2 years, and this is his second season. But last year, his injury was a problem for the Redskins when he went down. Apparently, he has an injury now that the Redskins aren't too sure about. And they haven't been that pleased with his play of late against the Giants. He had a very, very horrendous pass interference penalty where if he just locates the ball, he might pick it off. I mean, he literally never turned to locate the football. He panicked, ran slam into the receiver, and gave away a free 36 yards on a pass interference penalty down the field. You also have the senseless personal foul penalty, unsportsmanlike conduct against the Saints where he pushes Mark Ingram over the pile late. Just stupid. And so they haven't been as happy with him this year as they have been in the past. But I still think Monte Nicholson is a hell of a football player and a guy that I think needs to be on the field. So I still didn't anticipate the Redskins making the move. And on the other side of that coin, I didn't expect the Packers to move on from Clinton-Dix, even though I don't think they ever intended on re-signing him. If they just let him walk in free agency, they were going to get the same 4th-round pick instead of it being from the Redskins, and we don't know where the Redskins are going to finish. Maybe that pick is 10 picks higher because you got it from the Redskins. They're still going to get a compensation pick. They're still going to get a comp pick for him leaving in free agency. Now, it wouldn't have been in 2019. It would have been in 2020. But I digress. I just didn't see that move coming on either party's part, and I'm happy that it did happen. And so that's the most surprising move to me in free agency. You look at the next fill in the blank. The one player that you thought would be moved during the trade deadline that didn't was, I told you last week during Thursday Night Football, and I told you on the podcast last week and even the week prior to that, that I was assured that Devontae Parker was going to be moved. I thought his time in Miami was up. And it was funny. I was talking to a Dolphins fan during the telecast last week during Thursday Night Football overtime. And he said, Devontae Parker's not going anywhere. And he was really speaking from a fan's perspective. Like, look, we don't want him to go anywhere. We think Devontae Parker is awesome. And we think that his potential is better and eclipses just about every other receiver on this roster. So there's no way that we want to part with him. But we don't know what management is going to do. And I thought after his agent spoke up and he was benched and he was a healthy scratch, there was no way that those ties could be bonded. I thought they were severed and they couldn't be put back together again. I thought Devontae Parker was gone and it was a matter of time. And it just was up to a team to step up to the plate, offer up the kind of compensation that the Dolphins were looking for, and that he was going to be gone. And I thought he was going to end up in Philadelphia. To be honest with you, I thought the Eagles were going to get their hands on Devontae Parker. And I think I would have been more upset about Devontae Parker being in Philadelphia than Golden Tate. Even though Tate is a much more durable wide receiver, he's tougher after the catch. One of those guys that turns into a running back after he catches the football. Golden Tate doesn't scare me. Golden Tate is a solid wide receiver, does some good things, but he doesn't scare me. Devontae Parker has the ability to change the game. And again, he's one of those guys that you don't know when he's going to play because he's often hurt. But when he's healthy, as you saw in the game on Thursday, the guy has some real ability. And I thought the Dolphins were going to move him and get something for him, but I was wrong. And so that was the one player that I thought would be moved at the deadline that didn't find himself traded. And I could throw in a couple more. You know, I thought the Raiders would do some work with Garyon Conley. I thought he was gone for sure. I thought that Carl Joseph was gone for sure and that they were going to take just whatever they could get at this point for those guys. And, again, I was wrong. After 8 weeks of football, who is the league MVP in the league? Fill in the blank. So after 8 weeks of football, the league MVP is, from an offensive standpoint, I think it's a two-man race right now. Yeah, it can't be anybody other than Todd Gurley. Don't you call him Gurley. He's in all true man, yeah, baby. And then there's, of course, Showtime, Patrick Mahomes. It's one of the two. You pick which one tickles your fancy. Whichever flavor you like best, that's the guy you roll with. For me right now, what Patrick Mahomes is doing is ridiculous. But Todd Gurley is absolutely the man. And that performance he put up versus Green Bay this past week, he single-handedly willed his team to a victory in that football game. Without him and his damn near 200 yards of all-purpose total yards of offense, they don't win that game and they don't even come close. And so for me, Todd Gurley is the man right now, and he's the MVP of the league if you ask me offensively. But if you said Patrick Mahomes, I would not have a problem with it. I wouldn't even put up a fight. And both of those guys are deserving, and both of those guys are balling out of their brains right now. After 8 weeks of football, who's the league's defensive MVP? So after 8 weeks of football, the league's defensive MVP is, fill in the blank. For me, the league's defensive MVP, to me, it's not even close. It's Aaron Donald. Never, ever trust a man with two first names. He's leading the league right now in sacks with 10. He's the only guy in double digits at this point, and he's on pace for 20 sacks this season. I mean, what he did against the Green Bay Packers in that ball game was ridiculous. He literally took over that game. They couldn't stop Green Bay's offense except for when Aaron Donald decided to get into the backfield, split a double team, and get to Aaron Rodgers. The guy is insane, and it's amazing because you watch him and you look at him and you're like, there's no way Aaron Donald should be dominating the way that he does. You know, the guy looks undersized. He doesn't look like a guy that should be dominating the way that he does, but this dude is ridiculous, man. I literally watched him and I focused in on him during that Green Bay game, and the guy is spectacular. Aaron Donald is worth every single penny that he was paid in the offseason, and I can't imagine this Rams defense that at times gets gashed. I couldn't imagine where they'd be. They wouldn't be undefeated, I can tell you that much, without Aaron Donald. I couldn't imagine where they'd be without him right now. So for me, the defensive MVP of the league right now is Aaron Donald after 8 weeks of football. After 8 weeks of football, who is the defensive rookie of the year? So after 8 weeks of football, the league's defensive rookie of the year is fill in the blank. And I know they stink right now. And sometimes the voters, they like to ding you because you don't play on a good football team. But Bradley Chubb is as advertised, folks. And for those of you not paying attention, the man has 7 sacks. I don't know if you knew this or not, but the man's putting in work out in Denver. All right. He's got 7 sacks. So he's getting to the quarterback. In case you missed it. Bradley Chubb has 7 sacks. So the guy's getting to the quarterback. He's proving to be a great counterpart to Von Miller on the opposite side. And they got what they paid for. They got what they bargained for when they spent the 5th overall pick on Bradley Chubb. And so there's really not much more for me to say. The guy is balling. He's doing what I expected him to do. And he looks like he's going to be a terror for years to come. So defensive rookie of the year right now for me, Bradley Chubb, Denver Broncos, defensive end / outside linebacker. after 8 weeks of football, who's the offensive rookie of the year? So after 8 weeks of football, the offensive rookie of the year is fill in the blank. For me, the offensive rookie of the year, I went back and forth on this one because there isn't one guy that necessarily stands out above the rest. Courtland Sutton has been putting in work. And unlike last year when you had both the offensive and defensive rookies of the year going for New Orleans, I don't think that's the case in Denver, even though Courtland Sutton was the reason they felt comfortable enough to deal Demaryius Thomas. For me, it's Saquon Barkley, but he's not head and shoulders above the rest of the offensive football players, but he's so good. That Giants offense is so bad, and when you put that in its proper perspective, and you look at how bad they are offensively, how bad that offensive line is, how bad Eli Manning has been this season, and how he's the central focus of a team when they're going up against the Giants. If you're not stopping Odell Beckham, shame on you. If you step to the old dirty Beckham, if you're not stopping ODB, then you're looking to stop Saquon Barkley. And that's a lot for a rookie to take on his shoulders in his first year. It's a lot for you to be the focal point of an offense. But that's exactly what Saquon Barkley has been. And he's had his ups and downs this year. He's had some games where he's been ineffective, and really that's more of a byproduct of the offense than just him himself. But when he's good, man, God damn it, that Giants game on Thursday night versus the Eagles, the guy was exceptional. I mean, he was ridiculous in that game. And he's had games this season where he's taken over. He's made plays. The Panthers game comes to mind. The Texans game comes to mind as well. He is a true difference maker. And so for me, the offensive MVP right now is Saquon Barkley. But you go to the final question in that little pod there of questions. And thus far, fill in the blank is the comeback player of the year. So for you, who is the comeback player of the year? For me, I look around the league, and there's some guys that have made some valiant efforts to come back and be the same guy that they've been before. You know, some guys have failed miserably, like a David Johnson this season. Not the guy that we knew prior to the injury. Not the guy that we knew under Bruce Arians. It's a total different regime. It's a total different offense, and he's just not flourishing in Arizona right now. But you look at a guy that has come back like gangbusters, that is tearing shit up. That's J.J. Watt. He's got 7 sacks this year, folks. Now, granted, probably 3 games have totaled all of his sacks. He went off versus the Giants for like 3 sacks. Go figure. It's the Giants in that offensive line. But he's had his fair share of big plays this season, big games. He's got 7 sacks. He's going to end up with 12 or 14 when the season's done. And right now, for me, J.J. Watt putting in work. Defensive comeback player of the year, just comeback player of the year in general. I think that award has to go to J.J. Watt right now. We'll see what happens and how the rest of the season unfolds. But after 8 weeks of football, that guy for me right now is J.J. Watt. So with that being said, let's move on to the next category. And these are all playoff divisional category questions. And so I want to ask, in the NFC, the Falcons, the Bucks, the Cowboys, and the Lions are all 3 and 4. Of that group, who's most likely to make the playoffs? So in the NFC, the Falcons, Bucks, Cowboys, and Lions are all 3 and 4. Of that group, the fill in the blank are most likely to make the playoffs. So if you ask me, out of that group of 4 teams, which one would be the most likely to make the playoffs, I'd tell you it's the Atlanta Falcons. And they've got a big one this week coming up against the Washington Redskins to try to get back to 500 on the season. Even if they lose that game and drop to 3 and 5, I still think the Falcons have a realistic shot at making the postseason. They're a really good football team, especially on the offensive side. They're dangerous, and I really think that they've got a legitimate shot at making the postseason. I don't see it with the Bucks. I told you, any team that starts Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback not allowed to make the postseason. That's actually in the NFL handbook. So the Bucks are automatically disqualified from this conversation. The Cowboys are intriguing because if that Amari Cooper trade yields real dividends and they all of a sudden jump-started offensively. Their defense is so good. They could be a very dangerous team in the second half of the season. And the Lions, they're just too inconsistent for me. I already told you I've disqualified the Lions from postseason play this year with that loss at home to Seattle. They're done in my book. So really it comes down to those two teams for me, Falcons, Cowboys, and I'm taking the Atlanta Falcons. In the AFC, the Ravens and Dolphins are 4-4. The Titans are 3-4, and the Jags, Jets, Colts, and Broncos are all 3-5. Of the group, fill in the blank is most likely to make it to the postseason. So let me repeat that. In the AFC, the Ravens and Dolphins are 4-4. The Titans are 3-4. The Jaguars, Jets, Colts, and Broncos are 3-5. Of that group, the fill in the blank are the most likely to make it to the postseason. So looking at all of these teams, I can tell you right now who's not going to make it. The Dolphins aren't going to make the postseason. The Titans, they have a shot because of the division that they play in, but unless they turn things around after this bye week, and that game against Dallas on Monday night will tell me a lot about the Titans moving forward, so I won't rule them out quite yet. The Jags, I'm not willing to put those guys on the shelf yet. Their defense, still good. It's not as good as it was last year, but I think if they can get a semblance of the run game back when Fournette comes back, they can turn things around. I'm not willing to rule the Jags out either. But the Jets, the Colts, and the Broncos, they're all dead. And I almost don't want to count out the Colts with Andrew Luck, but their two last wins came against the Bills and the Raiders. They're 3-5. I just don't see them being able to beat the better teams in the league quite yet. So all those teams are dead in my eyes. But for me, the team in this group that's going to make the postseason, I'm bullish on them, is the Baltimore Ravens. They're 4-4. They've got a tough schedule, though, man. They still got the Chargers. They've still got the Falcons. They still got the Bucks, I think. They've already played the Saints. They've already played the Panthers. They've just got a tough go of it. They've still got the Chiefs. So if they're going to make it to the postseason, they're going to have to earn it. They're not going to get any freebies, but I think they're a good enough team that they'll win some games people don't expect them to win. And I've still got the Ravens finding a way to qualify for the postseason when it's all said and done. So you move on from that question to the next question. And now I've got a series of questions about teams that have either disappointed, surprised, or somewhere in between. So right now, the worst team in the league right now are the fill in the blank. So who's the worst team in football? I think we're going to see two of the worst teams in the league, but I don't think either one of these teams are the worst team in football right now. It's amazing because both of them only have one win. And I look at some of these other teams with 2 wins, and I'm like, I still think you might be worse than the Raiders. I still think you might be worse than the 49ers. I'm looking around. I look at Arizona. I don't think they're a good football team. I just don't. Even though they play their asses off on defense, I just don't think they're a good football team. I don't think they're all that well coached right now. I just don't have a lot of confidence in Arizona. I look at Buffalo. My God, are they bad? But, man, are they good on defense. Like, it's a shame how good they are defensively and how bad they are on offense. They just got a bad roster on offense. Like, Buffalo is going to be competitive most weeks because they play defense. I think you could almost say the same thing about Arizona. But I don't know, man. I look at Arizona, and sometimes I just think they're a team that is going to be non-competitive most weeks. Their defense is okay, but it's not great. You saw what Denver did to them, and Denver's not even that good of a football team. If you put a gun to my head and ask me who the worst team in football is, I'd tell you. And they swept the 49ers, so what does that say about San Francisco? But I guarantee you, if you put San Francisco or you put Arizona on Monday night against the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau Field, that game isn't 33-30. You know, they don't have a chance to win. They get their doors blown off. I just think Arizona's the worst team in football. That's just my personal opinion. Sorry, BE, if you're out there, but your team stinks. Most disappointing team of the first half are the fill in the blank. So the most disappointing team of the first half are the fill in the blank. There's two for me, but I'm not going to be wishy-washy here, and I'm not going to waffle. I'm going to give you a definitive answer, even though I've got two. The team that has disappointed me the most in the first half, and I'm happy, trust me, I'm not mad about it, it's the Philadelphia Eagles, though. I just assumed the Eagles would keep the train rolling, and they just show up. And right now, going into their bye week, they'd be somewhere around 6-2, no worse than 5-3. And you could argue that this Eagles team could easily be 2-6 right now. They could have easily have lost to the Indianapolis Colts. They could have easily lost to the Jaguars. Probably should have lost that game to the Jaguars. If Keelan Cole doesn't fumble before halftime, I don't think the Eagles win that football game. I'm just being honest with you. They're struggling right now. And I told you this 3 or 4 weeks ago. I can't quite put my finger on why they're struggling. You know, you can tell me that the receiver position stinks. I'll listen, but that's not the exact reason why. You can tell me that the secondary stinks. Well, the secondary stunk last year. That's not the exact reason why. I can't quite put my finger on why the Eagles aren't the Eagles that we saw last year, but they're just not. And I don't know if getting Golden Tate is going to solve anything or not, but Carson Wentz is starting to get back to form, but he's not the reason they're not the same team either. Like, I can't put my finger on it. I just think they had some juju going last year. They just had some good karma coming their way after years of heartbreak. They had good karma coming their way, and I think it just ran out. I don't think that anything's that different in Philadelphia. They're just not as good as they were playing last year. They got some breaks, and you know how that goes. You know, you play a first-place schedule, and you don't have the ball bouncing your way like it did last year, and, you know, it happens. You remember that game against the Raiders on a Monday night last year? You know, you get balls that bounce your way. You win games that you're not supposed to win necessarily, and shit happens. I just don't think the Eagles are what we thought they were going to be. And I'm not that disappointed because I'm a Redskins fan. Obviously, their demise is great for my team, but I look at the Eagles, and I thought they would be much better than what they are. A close second would be Jacksonville, but I gave you the team that has been the most disappointing to me. Biggest surprise team of the first half of the season are the fill in the blank. So there's a number of teams that would fit the criteria here. You know, obviously my Redskins starting off 5-2 is a pleasant surprise, and it's a big one. And the teams that they've beat to get there have gotten to 5-2. Pretty substantial, you know. If you would have asked me before the season started, were we going to beat Carolina, Green Bay, and Dallas all in the first half of the season, I would have looked you dead in your eyes and said, you're a goddamn liar. But that's exactly what they've done. But they're not the team that surprises me the most at this point. The team that is surprising me the most with their play in this season it's got to be the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Like, I really expected Patrick Mahomes to make mistakes, to turn the football over, to look like a rookie even though he's a second-year player. The man came into the season with one career start. Granted, he's got a ton of talent around him. Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Kareem Hunt, Samuel Watkins. I get it, but I still expected him to make mistakes. And for as bad as that defense has been this season, they've exceeded the level of garbageness from the defense and tripled it on offense with how good they've played. It's ridiculous. And because of that fact, they're 7-1. And the one loss was on the road on a Sunday night at Foxborough against Tom Brady, and Brady needed to have the football last to eke out a 43-40 win. And that also came with a couple of bad turnovers, which is what I thought he would have been doing more so of this year by Patrick Mahomes in the first half, and then he got his shit together in the second half, and it turned into a shootout. The Chiefs they've exceeded expectations. Remember, I told you before the season started, I thought the Chiefs were going to be a 6-win team. They've got 7 wins already, and we're only halfway through the season. How can that not be my surprise team of the league thus far? I've got 2 more for you. If the playoffs started today, in the AFC, the Kansas City Chiefs would be your number 1 seed. The New England Patriots would be your number 2 seed. The Pittsburgh Steelers would be your 3rd seed. The Houston Texans would be your 4th seed. The Los Angeles Chargers would be your 5th seed. And the Cincinnati Bengals would be your 6th seed. Of those teams, which one of these teams wouldn't make it to the playoffs? So, let me read that again. If the playoffs started today, of the following teams, fill in the blank: Kansas City, number 1 seed; New England Patriots, number 2 seed; Pittsburgh Steelers, number 3 seed; Houston Texans, number 4 seed; Chargers, number 5 seed; Bengals, number 6 seed. Which one of those teams would not make the playoffs? You know which one I'm going to pick. You don't even have to ask. But in case you don't know, it's the Los Angeles Chargers. I don't have confidence. Even though they're 5-2 and they're 1 game back in that division, I don't have any confidence in the Chargers. You know that. This is a big game for them this week versus the Seattle Seahawks on the road. If you're serious, if you want me to take you serious, go over to Seattle and win. If you want me to think you're still joking and you're still kidding around, you're still playing, then go ahead and lose, which is what I fully expect you to do. Lose. So you know my answer. As for the NFC side of things, if the playoffs started today, Rams will be your number 1 seed. Saints will be your 2 seed. Redskins would be your 3 seed. Bears would be your 4 seed. Panthers would be your 5 seed. Seahawks would be your 6th and final seed. So, with that being said, of those 5 playoffs or 6 playoff teams, which one wouldn't make it? Come on now. Do I have to answer this? Seriously. Do I have to answer this question? I think we all have the same answer here. It may be a couple of Bears fans out there that object. The Bears aren't holding off the Minnesota Vikings. The Bears aren't holding off the Green Bay Packers. The Bears aren't winning the NFC North Division. Now, could they sneak a wild card? It's possible, but I don't see it happening. They're not going to have a better record than the Panthers or the Seahawks or the Packers, for that matter. I don't think they're going to finish with a better mark than the Packers this season. I just don't see it happening. They could prove me wrong. They've got a tough stretch coming up where they're about to get real nasty in the division. They're about to really find out how good they are and where they stand in the NFC North. They've got one more game outside the division versus Buffalo this coming week, and then it's go time. Strap it up. It's go time. It's time for you to start playing some of the big boys in the division. And right now, they're 0-1 in the division. They lost to Green Bay in week 1. Haven't played another divisional game since. Very intriguing to see where this goes. But there's a team that I'm obviously taking out of that playoff scenario in the NFC. So that's fill in the blank. We're approaching game time, so I'm going to let you guys go. And my money picks of the week, I will post those. This is a tough week for me because there isn't a definitive. I've got my upset special. I'll give it to you right now. They've let me down already this season, but anytime you change a coach, you're good for a 1 week outburst. You're good for 1 week of exceptional football. Remember, we saw that with the Dolphins last year or 2 years ago when they made Campbell their coach, their interim coach, and the next week they mollywopped the Titans and nobody saw it coming. And then what happened after that? They stunk again. Oh, no, we suck again. But for 1 week, and this is my guy. I'm a Greg Williams guy. That's my guy. He should have been the Redskins head coach once upon a time. After Joe Gibbs 2.0, he was supposed to be the next guy up. We effed that up. But that's no here nor there. Greg is my guy. He's going to have them playing stupid defense, dumb defense. Patrick Mahomes is about to feel what it's like to play against some real defense. That's right. The Cleveland Browns at home upset special, taking down the Kansas City Chiefs. The City Chiefs. And yeah, I've been stinking it up with my upset special. I've lost 4 in a row. God damn it, Ty Montgomery. I should smack this shit out of you. I would have won last week. My upset special was primed to come through for your man, and Ty Montgomery took the game in the palm of his hands and shitted on me. That's why you in Baltimore, you bum. But nonetheless, I got the Cleveland Browns getting it done for your man T. For my money pick of the week. My guarantee, my lock, I don't know what it is yet. I still haven't figured it out. I think I know what I want to go with, but it's so damn hard. I think I know what I'm going to do, but I need to look at the games one more time just to make a definitive decision. So, in any event, that's the 27th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I thank you guys for joining me live. If you haven't been checking out the podcast, shame on you. If you haven't followed me on Twitter at LTNpod, shame on you. I'll be dropping little tidbits on you via that Twitter handle. I'll be dropping trivia questions and tits and bits from the podcast just to stimulate your brain, get you thinking a little bit. So make sure you're following me on Twitter at LTNpod as well as at Louie T Network on Twitter. But that's all the time I have for you today. Appreciate you guys sticking out with me on this live Louie T Network podcast episode. And I might do this a little bit more often. We'll see. But thanks for nothing for calling in, guys. You guys suck. Enjoy Thursday Night Football. And we'll come back after the game has met its conclusion. And look, even if it's a terrible game, if it's that bad, I might jump on and halfway, through the third or fourth quarter, and we'll get get the show started early. But in any event, rain or shine, good or bad, we'll reconvene for Thursday Night Football overtime. I've got the Raiders. I'll see you when the game ends. Thanks for joining me. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not the best NFL coverage it could be. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.